Welcome, everyone. I'm opening the regular meeting of the Fairfax Town Council. It's Wednesday, September 4th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. We are in the Fairfax Women's Club, 46 Park Road, Fairfax, California. And I just want to mention before we start that a few months ago, we put in a heat pump with AC and we got used to it for about a minute and the AC unit broke. So on one of our hottest days, feel free to get up and get some water in the kitchen. There's cups. So with that, like people want to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like a motion to approve the agenda, but before I do that, I want to mention that we're removing item 17 from the agenda. So with that change, could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move that with that change.
Okay, would somebody like to
I'll
second?
second it.
Okay, so Vice Mayor Blash, you're going to have to speak a little louder, but I heard you. Okay, roll call vote.
Councilmember Ackerman,
Yes.
Councilmember Hellman,
Yes.
Councilmember Catrano,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Blash,
Yes.
Mayor Kohler.
Yes. Okay, and I'll go ahead and read the land acknowledgement. The Fairfax Town Council acknowledges that we are located on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok people of present-day Marin County. We honor with gratitude the land itself and all of its ancestors, past, present, and emerging. The mayor shall maintain order at the meetings. The council and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and or ridiculing the character or motives of council members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain the standards of tolerance and civility. Please turn off all cellular phones or place them in the silent mode. The town council will review the agenda at 10 p.m. to ascertain which items, if any, will be continued to another meeting. Any matter not started by 11:30 will be continued to an adjourned or regular council meeting unless the council votes to suspend this rule. And before I open time, I'd just like to say that I would appreciate if speakers would refrain from using profanity and or disparaging people based on race, religion, orientation, or country of origin. While I'm aware that our ability to silence these types of comments is constrained by the Brown Act and the First Amendment, I'm asking everyone to please be civil and refrain from such disparagement in your comments. What I can do, however, is disconnect anyone whose comments disrupt the orderly conduct of our meeting and or absent appropriate findings are not under the council's subject matter jurisdiction or are not germane to the topic or matter being discussed. Should I determine an individual's comments are not within the council's subject matter jurisdiction or are disruptive to the orderly conduct of the meeting, I will be disconnecting that individual from making further comments. As well, should we have any disturbances in the room that are disruptive to the orderly conduct of the meeting, I'll not hesitate to take a break. I will ask everyone in the room and on Zoom to remember what I just said before I take public comments, also on agenda items or on the consent calendar. And just briefly, so open time for public expression. This is the time to address the council on matters not on the agenda. All comments are limited to 2 minutes. The council is not permitted to take action, and state law strictly limits the right of the council to discuss any unagendized item. Government Code Section 54954.2. If there are still raised hands after 30 minutes, open time will be continued to the end of the agenda. And what I'm going to do is do open time for 15 minutes in the room and then go to Zoom. And if there's time left over, we'll go to the 30 minutes. But just heads up. Okay, it's 6:35. First speaker, please. You need to press the button, please. Thank
Good
you.
evening, Council. My name is Fritz Stern. I'm a resident of Fairfax on Olima Road. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for your service. Really appreciate that. I'm here with others to bring to your attention the project that's ongoing at number 10 Olima Road. We understand that, it's great to have artist studios and design space. My parents were longtime residents at 58 Park, and they worked there as well. So I get that part. The hard piece is that early on in this operation, I went and introduced myself to Doug Wong, the owner, and asked him what kind of intention he had with the place. And he very clearly demonstrated to me their intention to open a beer garden and include many outdoor tables, showed us renderings of the space with large containers, and that created a lot of fear in our neighborhood, because with the recent event, which was held as a grand opening, which gladly, and we appreciate the action of the building department to have them scale that back. So we recognize and appreciate that. I want to say that they clearly intend to continue that kind of behavior. They've been red tagged twice. They never stopped work once. They have not submitted any kind of a package, to my understanding, to the town. And it's just been this bulldoze mechanism that we are concerned that we have no recourse. There seems to be very little leverage that the community has in addressing this operation that has moved into our neighborhood and threatens to change the character of that neighborhood greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's
You need to speak close. You need to turn the button on. You just turned it. Okay. And speak closer to the mic. Thank you.
Hello. Hi
Hello.
there. My name's Jasper. I live on Olima Road, and I'm a nurse, and my son goes to Manor Elementary. I'm on the PTA, and I'm part of the walk and roll committee there, and safe routes to school, which is really important to me. So when I did find out that 10 Olima intends to put an alcohol venue on the safe routes to school, outdoor, in a quiet neighborhood, with all the work that they've done without a single permit, and the town's very aware of that. I just want to call to the attention that I haven't had an opportunity to voice my opinions about that, because without any permits, we're not given any time on the agenda to really say anything. And I have strong feelings. If you've ever been at around 3 o'clock on Olima Road, it's our bicycle thoroughfare for our town, and keeping kids, families, adults, everyone going to Tamarancho, all the kids that go to White Hill, all the kids that go to Manor, keeping them safe is a real priority of mine. And so I just want to call this to your attention, make sure that you're aware that this is clear, their intentions. They did have a grand opening where traffic was backed up while blocking Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. And along on Olima Road, there was no access for pedestrians. There were cars parked in the middle of the street. I've sent footage of all this to our planning committee, and they are aware. But I just want to know, to bring this to your attention so that you know that this is all happening without a single permit or any approval, and everyone seems to just be, it's just going on. So I thank you for taking the time to hear me out, and I want to prioritize safety in my community, and especially in my quiet neighborhood. I feel like if we allow them to have outdoor alcohol venues on our safe routes to school in a small neighborhood, where does this end?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to assure folks that we are very well aware of 10 Olima, and our building official is on top of it. As far as the beer garden, that would something that they would have to get a license from ABC on. So I do go near there and have seen a lot of activity last weekend in particular. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Okay, my name is Burke Carr. I live at 23 Olima, which is across the street from 10 Olima property. I'm going to read you a little something from a book called Code Check. It says, planning permits and inspections before beginning a building or project, plans must be approved by the local building department and must conform to applicable climatic and geographic design criteria. The plans must include setbacks from property lines and adjacent slopes. There's more stuff that says, but I'm going to save it from you, all right? These people started their construction work on that property early in the spring. At least twice since then, the building official who's on top of things has posted red stop work signs. They have kept working. We're talking at least a dozen trucks almost every day since the beginning of spring. Total disregard. They're making a mockery of this town by not following the building code. Anybody that tells you they're doing things by code doesn't know what they're talking about, because the first line of the code says you have to have permits. No permits on this property. I went to that opening they had a couple weeks ago, and I have a photo on my phone of a brand new building, all new construction, all new framing, and there, hanging inside, is the red tag that says stop work, second notice. All right, they're making a total mockery of this town, and they had this opening party. Cars parked on the bridge. There's barely enough room for regular traffic on the bridge. I saw no police presence on that bridge, ticketing people. They were serving alcohol. I didn't see them checking IDs. They are selling things. I didn't see a single permit for business anywhere. Several shops, they're selling things, people taking money, price tags right there. Where was the building official? I don't know. He has not been around to do any of these things. And when we have talked to him about these things, he seems to sound like, oh, my hands are tied behind my back. I know he has 1 foot out the door, but this town has to do something about this, all right? Because they're going to steamroll over us as it goes on.
Thank you. And he doesn't have 1 foot out the door. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Rick Hamert from the property formerly known as School Street Plaza, because today I turned in my keys. And it's not a pretty thing what's going on. And I need to make you aware on that. But first, I'd like to say ditto about 10 Olima. 10 Olima, like School Street Plaza, it shows up on our zoning maps as CL, which is limited commercial, which is no retail. That is a retail mall, what we have going on at 10 Olima. It is retail, and they need a use permit for that, and they don't have it. Seriously. But anyway, back to School Street Plaza, you know, we've all been given notice to 15 tenants, roughly 15 that are still there. And there's one in particular that's going to have a really tough time. And I need to ask you, I mean, that we don't want this whole project and this whole, the whole housing element due because one stone was not turned. There is one silver bullet that exists on that property. And we have spent dozens of meetings here about dispensary limitations. The dispensary is on that property. It is grandfathered in at that property. And if you, I suggest all of you familiarize yourself with the codes regarding how it's licensed to operate in that place. Please do something so they can move. They have to be able to move, because if they can't move, they're going to do everything they can to make the project fail. So it's very essential that the dispensary has some special attention from the town staff, from everyone involved, to see how we can make it work for them. They are a vital business in this town. We really need them there. They are a real, you started it here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Carr from Olima Road, and I'm here also to speak about 10 Olima. And I'm mostly here just to express concern. I know nothing's going to be done tonight. We're not going to get any answers, but I've spent the past 5-6 months just watching things happen. I've been down and spoken with the people at downtown in the planning commission. And I was assured, well, when they submit their permits, you'll be notified and you can come to the meeting. So we kept waiting for that, and that meeting never happened. Yet big construction, big happenings kept going on. So I'm really just here to be on the record to express my concern that when that meeting does happen, so much is already going to have happened. They already have cheerleaders behind them by having that big opening. Everybody was excited. Oh, this is so great. What a great, we want this. And the people in the community don't. It was stated, it is a safe routes to school. On the weekends, it's huge for bicyclists, for families, for dog walkers. That stretch of Olema is heavily pedestrianed, heavily. And after seeing how things went at that opening, it definitely caused alarm. I saw a couple of near accidents. The parking was definitely illegal. And I just don't want that to continue. And if they're going to sell alcohol, I don't want that. We have enough alcohol in this town. In downtown alone, not counting every place, but the major alcohol places, there's at least 7. Do we need another one? It's going to become a part of this like drinking ring. Go to this one, then go to that one, then go to that one, then go to that one. And it's not really what we want even though I know that they're zoned for to be a restaurant. How many years ago? How many decades ago? And they're using that. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Liz Gottlieb, and I'm representing the Fairfax Climate Action Committee. And I really just want to remind everybody that on Saturday at the Fairfax Library, we have a biodiversity event, and we're really excited. There's going to be a scavenger hunt, 10 to 11, for kids and families for native plants. And then speakers, Jason Dressler from the Miwok Coastal Tribe will be there. So we're very excited and hope people come out. And then at the picnic coming up in September, we have one last chance to win an induction stove. So during the raffle, we're really excited about that. And then I think it's October 18th, we're having a movie night here, Purple Mountains, and we'll have the film, like the director of the film, Josh Bones, here at that event. So thank you.
Thank you. Just want to let you know, we just appointed a new member to the Climate Action Committee tonight. Thank you for joining us. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Krista Postendern, and I also live on Olema Road. And echoing what they have to say, but another little piece to the puzzle is Doug Wong is the owner and developer. He's also associated with Woods over in San Anselmo on the Avenue, which has investors and has been boarded up for numerous years. And then they did a soft opening the week before this opening happened. I believe there's investors involved in this. I'm not 100% sure. It's just been really difficult because there hasn't been transparency, and he's a businessman. He's an entrepreneur. And at that event, there were petitions being signed that he wants to change whatever the zoning is. That makes me very fearful because we just feel powerless in the community. That's right there. We've raised our kids. It's been a very quiet lot. I know anyway. So it just, we don't have a lot of trust in what his intentions are, and he is not transparent. So he also, in those rendering of the pictures that they took down from their website, but we have pictures of them because they were once on there. One of the beer garden person is Almanac. Almanac is a company that's over in Alameda. It hosts large events up to 800 people. They're different spaces. You can have 80 people in this event, 500 people in this event. I'm not sure what Doug Wong is intending, but he's surely not letting us know. And now we have been told he's putting together his package to submit his plans, and he's working with an architect. I'm super fearful about the next leg. So I hope that we aren't just blindsided and it's going to happen and snowball before we know it. And he has all the language and lawyers and changes what Fairfax is all about. Most of the people at that event, you might not have recognized them as your neighbors. So I think that the vibe, anyways, I think what I'm saying is the biggest thing is what's coming ahead of us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Could you turn the button off? We're going to go to Zoom now because we're at 15 minutes. So, Madam Clerk, do we have people on Zoom?
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, well, then we can finish in the room. Thank you. Mr. Bell.
Mark Dell, Fairfax. I'd like to see an agenda item about the attorney's salary. Several years ago, the salary for the attorney was around $240,000 or $250,000. Made a pretty big leap up to 375 or 395,000. And from what I understand, the past year, her remuneration was about $500,000. This is a small town. And for us to be having legal bills of $500,000, I think indicates that there may be even systemic problems going on. Why? Why is this town generating such high legal bills? Is one question I think that needs to be answered. And secondly, the attorney's opinion that giving a invoice with the amount of hours that she spends on specific items is a violation of attorney-client privilege. We're not asking for the details of that. We'd like to know how many hours are being spent on what. And I think we, since we're actually the ones footing the bill, have the right to know that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Excuse me, Mayor, we do have a raised hand on Zoom.
Okay,
Just
let's
so you
take
know.
that first and then next. Would you mind turning that, Todd? Thank you.
The speaker with the raised hand on Zoom is Larry. Larry, you are unmuted. Larry, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry about that. Here I am again. I've been designated by the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center Board of Directors to invite all council members and staff to the open house party on October 5th. It's a potluck. I'm sure we're going to be providing some snacks and stuff, but we're kind of in a new chapter and we'd love to see you guys check it out and reconnect with us now that we're kind of in a new phase. So I hope you can mark it down on your calendar. It's October 5th, which is a Saturday, I think. And it's from 4 to 6. So thank you very much. And back to more serious matters for you guys. Take care.
Thank you. That was a little garbled at the beginning. I just want to remind folks what Larry was talking about is the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Centers having an open house 4 to 6 October 5th. And they're part of our community. So Todd, welcome.
Good evening, Fairfax and members of the press who are listening to this and the media and Fairfax Town Council. I and others are gravely concerned about the double standards and the lack of transparency and the violation of Fairfax Municipal Code ordinances by members of this town council. How is it that you expect members to adhere to the laws that you don't adhere to yourselves? The mayor, amongst one of the town council members who has violated the municipal code related to posting of election signs prior to 60 days before an election, responded to Kathy Flores that she adhered to the directions in the elections guide, but the directions in the elections guide point to a town of Fairfax municipal sign code ordinance ending in .030 that states no signs are to be posted more than 60 days prior, yet the mayor has admitted that she posted them on September 2nd, at least 3 days prior to when they're postable. Other signs have been posted by a candidate, Cindy Swift. Other signs have been posted that were received by council member Stephanie Hellman at her home in violation of the town's sign ordinance. Aside from that, I call into question the validity of the entire election being conducted as the town's elections official, designated elections official, according to Marin County's elections office, is Michelle Gardner, who has not been available to answer candidates' questions, who has not responded to phone calls. And I call into question the signatures placed on ballot arguments and ballot argument signature submissions, where on the town's website is posted as if all of you signed some of them and all of you did not sign them, as per the Marin County forms, which state very clearly at the bottom that you must sign and you must submit letters of authorization at.
Thank you. I will point out that I followed the candidate guide that was given to all the candidates, so everybody had a level playing field. You're not coming back up for August 30th, and I would point to our clerk, Madam Clerk, Christine Foster, and perhaps our town attorney.
You are correct. All the candidates received a candidate guide with information about posting signs. I believe you're correct in saying that I put August 30th in the candidate guide, and I will have to go back and recalculate the 60 days before the election.
Okay.
So I'll
and,
check that.
Town attorney, did you have anything to add regarding the other statements which may be incorrect?
I didn't hear anything that I think warrants any kind of response.
Okay, thank you. All right, bring it back. With Lingsheng, did you want to speak? Okay, if you could press the button, please.
Lingxian Bell, I live in Dominga, and I would like to ask the council to give directions to the police to issue fix-it tickets for car alarms that don't work, because it seems like there's quite a lot of car alarms that don't work and just go on for no reason, and it's really unhealthy. It's not good for the nervous system to have those alarms going on. It's impossible to relax. So it would be an easy thing to do for the council to give directions to the police to just issue fixing tickets. I've talked to them about it, and they were thinking that it would be quite doable, but it's up to you to give them the directions to do that. And then that would force people to fix their dysfunctioning car alarms. So that would be a great thing for everybody else. I'm sure I'm not the only one who is, annoyed with that. And I would like to ask other people to also ask you, so it's not just me asking you, because I know a lot of people are bothered by it. So that's my request, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe the council does not issue direction to issue citations. If there is a car alarm that's going off, call the non-emergency number of the police and let them know, and they will come out.
I have done that many times, and sometimes they come out and then they find out who it is and ask them to come in, but they don't issue a fix-it ticket.
Okay, well,
So
if it's
then-
in the code that it's a violation, they can, but we don't give them direction to issue citations. So
there's nothing you can do.
thank you.
Yeah.
No. Okay, are there any other speakers in the room? Seeing none, I will close open time. And we're pretty much right on schedule. Our first item is kind of a long one. And it is adopting a resolution, excuse me. Rick, thank you. Adopt a resolution to accept an assignment from Marin Open Space Trust, most of all rights, duties, and obligations under a purchase and sale agreement between most and the owner of the vacant property, commonly known as the Wall property, in order to preserve the property as permanent open space. Authorize the town manager to provide $100,000 in Town Measure A. Funds to most for the purchase of the property and execute a deed restriction in favor of the County of Marin Open Space District in recognition of the county's grant of $1 million in County Measure A funds for acquisition of the property, and authorize the town manager and or mayor to accept $500,000 from most for the maintenance and rehab of the property. Authorize the town manager to obtain and pay for a title insurance policy on the property and pay 1/2 of the closing costs for acquisition of the property, and authorize the town manager and or mayor to execute any other necessary documents required and or perform additional steps necessary to complete acquisition of the property. And just want to remind folks, we have a supplement. So with that, I will turn it over to our town manager, Heather Abrams.
Thank you. It is very hot, so let me know if you'd like to skip this presentation, but I just have a short presentation and Christine is pulling that up now. So this is a good news item. This is we're getting close to the close of escrow on the property commonly known as the Wall property, 100 acres in Fairfax, right near downtown, that will be preserved as open space in perpetuity, forever and ever.
It may be me, but I think
Am I
as we have
too
our
soft?
fans going, if you could speak a little closer, that would
I'll
be
get-
great. Thank you.
Someone's already been chewing on this microphone, so
All
I
right.
want to get to this. So as you may recall, okay, no worries. I'll just keep going. The Wall property is a 100-acre undeveloped site, and a number of agencies, including most in the town, have been working together to preserve this property. That's a picture of it, so you can get a sense of how large it is and how it kind of envelops one side of town. If you can go to the next slide, please. There is natural habitat, open space, hiking trails, cultural resources there, so we're very excited to be able to preserve that. Next slide, please. This just gives you a reminder of all of the milestones that have already been accomplished on this project, and it's been something that the subcommittee with the Mayor Kohler, and Councilmember Catrano have been working on for some time. So really appreciate that. And the county has also partnered with us, both providing $1 million in Measure A funds from their portion of Measure A, as well as the town's $100,000 from Measure A. And the county has agreed to maintain those trails, which is wonderful. So next slide, please. The mayor read through all of the actions today, but I would just want to summarize those. This is accepting and executing the assignment of the property to the town, providing $100,000 from the town's Measure A funds for the acquisition, executing the deed restriction, which will show that it's going to be open space forever and ever. Accepting $500,000, which most has raised, to allow the town to do basic maintenance that needs to be done as we accept the property, provide the title insurance policy and closing costs, which are pretty minor but important step. And then allow the town manager or mayor as appropriate to sign all of those documents and complete that task of completing the escrow. And so then next slide, please. We are really excited to hopefully close this escrow and do the ribbon cutting. We have a date picked out, so we want everyone to save that date, Monday, October 14th. 5 p.m. We are planning to have a shuttle so that we can pick people up so that, you know, people don't have to drive there. That will likely park in the lower pavilion parking area and take people out. We'll have more information at the in the next newsletter, or as soon as we can in the newsletter. So that's where people can look for that information. And we also encourage people, if they do need to drive, to definitely carpool to that event. And so with that, I'll go to the final slide and find out if you have any questions.
And just a reminder for folks on the ribbon cutting ceremony, it's not a nice, beautiful path. So wear good shoes. We're not going to go very far up, but, you know, wear good shoes with some tread.
This is a natural area and it's meant for hiking. It's, yes, definitely, please no high heels.
And I was planning on wearing high heels, but that's just me.
No, ma'am.
I'll
The
be-
recording will be at the bottom, right? You don't have to go to the top. Just
we're
Not the
just
very
going to go
top, but
a
there
little
is a
ways
little bit of a
in.
hike.
So you can see the best view. So it'll be fine. I think we were starting at 5:30. I'm not sure. But anyway, questions for town manager? Question? No?
No, thank
Okay. Well, let's go to the public. I want to remind folks, this is good news and we're all neighbors here. So we're looking forward to most closing the deal, hopefully by the end of September. Todd, you're up. Can you set the timer, please?
Hi, Todd Greenberg, and I'm one of the 200 plus donors for this. So I have standing with regard legally to what's going on here. I'm a little bit dismayed that there's a lack of transparency on numerous things, and there's been a lack of transparency for the Fairfax Open Space Committee, that a lot of people have been kept in the dark. There are a number of things in this staff report that are problematic. Page 1, item 6, authorize town manager and mayor to execute any other necessary documents. We don't want any last minute surprises. We donated money. We don't want any last minute surprises. This should be listed as to what other documents you're executing. Most good escrow agents will tell you what documents need to be executed. They're prepared beforehand. The maintenance, that should be a budget item here. We should be able to clearly see in this report before you take a vote on this tonight how much it's going to cost and how much it's going to last. How long does $500,000 maintain that property? And when will the Fairfax residents have to start paying for it and how much? Page 3, the town's engineer has estimated, Miller Pacific Engineering has estimated. Well, we all know from a later agenda item that your estimates have been approximately 50% off for roads. So is this estimate anywhere right? And why are the bids going to come in a year from now or something? Anyway, that's basically it. If you're going to do this, you should be transparent about it. I appreciate all that everybody's done, but it's wrong, continuing wrong for this town council to not be transparent to people with public money.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Mark.
Mark Bell, I just have a really simple question. And hopefully you can answer it when open time comment is done. Who is the owner, the current owner of the vacant property commonly known as the Wall property? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please, Frank.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say congratulations to everyone who participated in this purchase. But I do have a question. Do we know who the anonymous $100,000 donor was? It was in a paper that there was a $100,000 donor, and it says it was anonymous. I'm not sure the town of Fairfax should accept a $100,000 anonymous donation. I think we all need to know who that is. Thank
So
you.
just to clarify, all the donations are going to most. We do not know those people that are donating, and I believe they keep that confidential unless somebody wants to let the information out. So that's what we know.
Okay, I've never heard of a $100,000 anonymous contribution to.
Yeah, I don't know.
Fairfax project. Thank you.
Thank you. And then to answer, it's Sequoia Mortgage Associates, or do they have a different name?
Yeah, there's been Sequoia and then also the Miranda Heights.
Yeah, so Sequoia Mortgage is the folks that we're dealing with, but they created an LLC called Miranda Heights, something like that. But that's pretty typical in property transactions. But again, most is doing all the negotiations. So Michael?
Thank you. I apologize, had to step outside. I too am concerned about the town indirectly or directly, accepting a $100,000 donation without acknowledging who and where it came from. This is how we pander for political favors, and whether or not it goes through most, if town is benefiting from the overall transaction by acquiring a property that received this donation, again, I think it should be transparent. We wouldn't want most or any other trust to receive money improperly, and not that I'm saying it is, but think of just the extreme that you're going to set up a trust and raise millions of dollars, drug money, so then you can buy something else legitimately. And this is why we make these things transparent. So if the town is going to benefit by receiving this property, I certainly think the town should insist on transparency on how the original money was acquired for the asset that the town will be responsible for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers in the room? Are there any speakers on Zoom?
There are no speakers on Zoom.
Okay, bringing it back. Oh, there is a speaker on Zoom?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Bill, you are unmuted.
I believe, is that Bill Long?
That's correct.
Bill, welcome.
Bill, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. So council members, Madam Mayor, Bill Long from Most. This is a special evening, and it's an opportunity for me to say again how impressed we have been with the spirit and the support from the folks in Fairfax and the surrounding areas. It's been a terrific example of real community backing for an open space acquisition. This is our 11th project since we were incorporated 15 years ago, and it is the most spirited one. And I'll have to say this too, the most fun, because you are fun people. And we're looking forward to wrapping it up in time for that scheduled ribbon cutting. But I do want to make special thanks to, of course, the council and your committee of Mayor Kohler and Chance Cutrano, and to your open space committee who did a lot of the preparations, the wonderful party back in January, and the promotion of the fundraising efforts. We have over 240 donors at this point. That's a great turnout. And we're in the process now of bringing in our grants, collecting our grants and our pledges. And we're going to do our very best to wrap this up, as I say, in time for that ceremony. So thank you. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Bill. It's been a real pleasure, and we look forward to our celebration. Any other speakers on?
No more speakers on Zoom.
Bringing it back. Any more deliberation, or shall we entertain a motion? Just don't forget we have a supplement. Councilmember Cutrano, would you like to make the motion?
Yeah, just a quick question to our town attorney. Do I have to read through each of these bullets in this report?
I'm sorry it's so long. I apologize for that, but it would be nice if you would do that. It would be
All in
accurate.
one,
It
correct?
would be accurate, yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, I'm happy to make a motion to adopt a resolution to authorize the mayor to accept and execute an assignment from Marin Open Space Trust, or MOST, for all rights, duties, and obligations under a purchase and sale agreement between MOST and the owner of the vacant real property commonly known as the Wall property, assessor parcel number 001-25131 and 001-15012 and 001-16009, and finally 001-17151, and to authorize the town manager to provide $100,000 of Town of Fairfax Measure A funds to MOST for purchase of the property, and to authorize the town manager to execute a deed restriction in favor of the County of Marin open space district in recognition of the county's authorization and provision of $1 million in county Measure A funds for acquisition of the property, and to authorize the town manager and or mayor to accept a $500,000 donation from Marin Open Space Trust through escrow for maintenance and rehabilitation of the property, and to authorize the town manager to obtain and pay for a title insurance policy on the property and pay 1/2 of the closing costs for acquisition of the property. And finally, to authorize the town manager and or mayor to execute any other necessary documents required and or perform additional steps necessary to complete the acquisition of the property.
Is it okay if I second? I would love to second that motion. Yes. All right, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ackerman,
Yes.
Councilmember Hellman,
With joy.
Councilmember Catrano,
Absolutely, yes.
Vice Mayor Blash,
Yes.
Mayor Kohler.
Yes. Hooray. We're almost there. I just want to remind folks, it was in our newsletter that the Open Space Committee is celebrating their 20th anniversary here on Saturday night, and also doing an early celebration about Wall. So we're getting there. It's very exciting news. Okay, moving on and to item 2. And I believe we have Fire Chief Mahoney on Zoom. He's feeling a little under the weather.
Yes, so I'll start this item and then Chief Mahoney will talk and run the slides. So the item before you is an update on the fire station in Fairfax, Station 21. The town owns the station and is responsible for the upgrades there. And we wanted to bring you through kind of what's happened so far, both at the department level and in the Fairfax station, and get your direction on next steps. And Chief Mahoney will talk more about those options, which we prepared 3 options for you. And with that, I will turn it over to the chief.
Welcome, Chief. Thanks for joining us despite being a little under the weather. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Councilman. Good evening to you and to members of the audience. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Well, the intent of the fire station remodels is to really bring all of our fire stations to a contemporary standard for a diverse workforce, including gender neutral sleeping quarters and bathroom facilities. So a little background of why we're here right now, which is good news, is starting July 1, 2025, all of our fire stations are going to move from a 2-person fire engine to a 3-person fire engine. So we'll now have 3 firefighters on each one of our fire engines and stationed at each one of our fire stations. We're actually the last department in the county to move to a 3-person engine company. So it's a very exciting thing for us at the department, and very exciting thing for the residents of each of the communities that we serve. So Station 18, which is located in Ross, is due to close July 1st, 2025. And part of that increased staffing is that 1 additional firefighter will move to Fire Station 21 in Fairfax, resulting in the recommended 3 firefighters per fire engine. San Anselmo is also going to receive additional firefighter staffing and is currently in the process of upgrading their Fire Station 20, which is located at Butterfield Road. They are upgrading it for similar reasons that we're presenting to the council tonight for additional sleeping quarters and bathroom quarters. Fire Station 20 is currently at a stage in the remodel process where We expect to go out to bid for the construction job in this fall, so sometime in October or early November. Fairfax is responsible for Fire Station 21 and all of the facilities it has committed to upgrades to accommodate the third firefighter. The JPA outlines that each town is responsible for the fire stations in which they reside in. So that's the reason why Fairfax is responsible for Fire Station 21 and San Anselmo is responsible for their 2 fire stations that they own. The current Fire Station 21 is fairly outdated. It hasn't been updated at all since its construction in the 1970s. The current location, as we know, is subject to flooding. There has been some vision planning on my part. I feel that as a role as fire chief, you not only have to look at what the future needs are, but look at a vision for the department in the community's needs in the future. And relocating the fire station at some point is going to it should be considered and should be discussed. I know it's a big task, but if you don't start planning for it, I can guarantee you that is probably never going to happen. So we've looked at some other options to relocate the fire station up at some buildings such as the B of A, which was for sale recently, but sold to a private owner, and some other sites that aren't for sale, but just happen to be some good locations. Some of those sites are still viable options at this point. So there are some possibilities for some vision planning here for the future. Fairfax, a little bit of background on the current costs of what Fairfax spends on the facility is there's $15,000 built into the fire department budget that is paid by Fairfax that accounts for annual maintenance of the fire station. It's largely handled by the fire department personnel. It's for repairs such as plumbing repairs to window repairs to other repairs that are needed throughout the year. We all know in 2005, we had a flood at Fire Station 21. When I went back and looked at the actual cost estimates of what that cost the town, the total cost was about $337,000, and it took approximately 6 months to repair. If you looked at the current CPI as to this date, that would be about $525,000 as of today's cost, not including the tremendous inflation in construction costs and obviously staff and department time it would take to complete those repairs. We presented 3 options here. Options 1, 2, and 3. I'll review the 3 options quick. And option 1 is the larger scope. It's the more comprehensive option. It is a remodels of the upstairs that includes an additional dorm room, an additional bathroom, and to update the kitchen, which hasn't been updated since 1974. There are some additional requirements that are going to need to be met. A lot of those requirements are still being vetted out and looked at in the plan check review to see actually what truly needs to be done or not. But some of those requirements are such as 1 hour fire separation, seismic retrofitting, and ADA accessibility. And all of these may be required with the additional cost estimates that we received about 6 months ago, which I'm sorry, about a year ago, which is about $672,000 to do the upstairs, $86,000 to do the downstairs, and the additional unknown requirements that I called out before through the plan check review. Some of the pros of option 1 is this is a longer term solution. It's not the longest term solution. The longest term solution would be relocating the fire station, which would take it out of the flood zone and alleviate any type of flooding of the emergency response building. But it's a longer term solution. It modernizes the facility in a way that it will accommodate the three firefighters. And some of the cons are it's the highest cost option. It may delay some future relocation of the fire station out of the floodplain, depending on the cost. Option 2 is to build a separate dorm area. It's a valued engineer option. It's to build a separate dorm area in the emergency operations center room, which is upstairs at the fire station also. It includes a bathroom and a kitchen remodel. So notice the difference here is it's not adding an additional bathroom, and it's remodeling the existing kitchen. The cost estimate would require a valued engineer estimate, and it's expected to be lower than option number 1. The pros are the cost is moderate. It extends the life of the fire station. But the cons is it doesn't address all the building deficiencies, including it continuing to remain in the floodplain. And option 3 is the least invasive option. It's a minimal remodel. It would divide the current dorm space that we have now into 2 dorm areas with a wall, and it would remodel the bathroom and in the kitchen as the budget allows. The cost estimate's likely to fit within the original budget of the allocation of $210,000, which was agreed upon in 2022 in the Third Amendment of in the Ross Valley Fire Department JPA. The pros is this will be the quickest because it's the least amount of work and the least expensive, and it would meet the immediate need to some extent. The cons are it's a very short-term solution, and it really doesn't meet what the firefighters need today. And I will be open for questions and comments from the council.
So questions, Fire Chief Mahoney, Chance or Councilmember Catrona?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for the presentation. I had just a couple quick questions, at least at this early stage in the discussion here. I'm curious, the numbers. So for option 1, in the presentation that you presented, the unknown costs from Coastland now have a number in the slide deck, which were not in the staff report, of approximately $740,000. And I was wondering if you could sort of speak to how we came to those numbers and what that breaks out to, or do we have a breakout, or how do we arrive at that number to get to the 1.5 million total?
Yeah, so I did recognize that in the staff report that number was missing. So I wanted to bring that to your attention in the slide presentation. And that is a very rough estimate on what the total cost would be. The cost never got cost estimated out once we got the recommendations or the requirements back from the cost estimator. But those costs we factored in would be pretty expensive. It would be upgrading ADA requirements for access into the building and possibly even up to the upstairs. It would be firewalling the entire interior of the building that is facing the engine room, and then seismically retrofitting the building to meet earthquake standards.
And a quick follow-up to that. So of the all all of these additional requirements from the outside plan check, is it your and maybe it's a question for Public Works Director Umbertus too, but is it our understanding currently that we can pick and choose from the list of items, or is it once we reach a certain threshold of renovation, all of those things are triggered and we have to expend the full amount to do all those things? And it's not clear to me, between options 1, 2, and 3, at what point you hit that threshold where you start needing to, I'm not saying that any of these things are things we don't want. I think we want to do all of these things at some point, but I guess I'm just wondering, do we have to do them all at the same point in time? Or is it sort of a menu of things that we can, a menu of improvements or renovations that we can make to the facility?
Thank you, Councilmember Cutrana. My name's Lauren Burtis. I'm your Director of Public Works. To answer your question, there are certain things that do certainly get triggered by the building code, which we are obligated to follow. There are certain things like ADA in which you are required to improve a certain percentage of your budget that goes into accessibility improvements. So there is some ability to take a look at that based upon the budget, but a lot of these things may be necessary based upon just building code. Where we stand and why there's some question at this point is that we asked Coastland to provide us with a pre-bid kind of review of our documents. And what they came back with were a number of recommendations and items on that list of saying, these are the types of things that we would look for. Some of the items may already exist in the building just because they haven't been physically able to inspect it. Other things are items that they're suggesting that may be required. So there's still some question as to how hard that will be and how many of those things we'll do. But certainly for things like ADA, it's based upon percentage of budget. Depending on the type of work that you may end up doing, if you're working on the structure, it may trigger something else. So there's still some question as to the full amount of what may be triggered by any one of these projects.
Got it. And then my final question, if you could speak, Chief, to where the $210,000 number came from. It sounds like that's an older estimate, and I suspect that all 3 of these options, any one of the options, or if we create a new option, whatever, it sounds like all of these numbers will need to be updated, or we'll need better information to be able to make a good decision. But could you speak a little bit to that $210,000 number and when that came about?
Yeah. So during the discussions of the closure of Fire Station 18, there were discussions amongst the towns of an agreement of, if Ross were to close their fire station, what would this mean? What kind of impacts would the other towns have? And one of the impacts for the towns, which is a good impact for Fairfax and San Anselmo, is that they would be receiving an additional firefighter, because those firefighters from Fire Station 18 would be redistributed. So there was an agreement in the Third Amendment of the JPA, which states that on or before the fire station closure date of July 1, 2025 for the town of Ross, the town of Fairfax shall contribute a one-time cost not to exceed $210,000 to fund the interior remodel of Fire Station 21. And that $210,000 came from ultimately what is outlined there is option number 3, which is erecting a wall in the current dorm area, and then doing a quick cost estimate of building cost back in 2025 of how much it would cost to remodel the existing bathroom, and then there was an agreement with the town after that the town would separately fund a kitchen remodel. So the $210,000 came out of the third amendment of the JPA.
Got it. And then I guess my final question, one thing that wasn't in here at all, but is the burning question for me, thinking about this timeline of accepting another firefighter paramedic in July of 2025 and not wanting to have our folks sleeping in a trailer in the parking lot outside of the fire station for an extended period of time. But it's not clear to me what the timelines are for any of these options. It wasn't something that was included in the staff report necessarily as like a big called out thing. But that's kind of a burning question for me. And I'm wondering, do we have any sense at this stage, option 1 through 2 or 3, what the differential is in the timeline for actually getting those things done and how that matches up with the deadline for transitioning to a 3-person engine company here at Station 21?
Yeah. So to answer your first question about the timeline, I think obviously as you move down in the options, the timelines get shorter and shorter. I can answer for option number 1, which is, you know, the most desirable option that would meet the needs of the department. You know, ultimately, you know, extending the life of the station, which, you know, I would say would probably be about 2 years from now, a year and a half from now, 2 years from now. And I'm only going off of my current experience with Fire Station 20 and where we are with Fire Station 20 is these things take a lot of time. And I think, you know, as important as the timeline is, it's also extremely important to think about, you know, is there a bridge that we can bridge that gap with between now and whatever's desired or whatever's agreed upon that will ultimately be a better outcome for the department as we move forward. And so option number 1, I would say about a year and a half to 2 years before completion. Option number 2, I would say possibly a year and a half. And option number 1, I would say completion, which would be, you know, sometime this time next year.
Thank you.
If I may just add, just to clarify, option 1 is the largest, most robust remodel. So we expect that it would be, you know, the most intensive in terms of time, finances, labor. Option 2 would be value engineering that. And option 3 is something that could be accomplished in the timeline and in the original commitment budget, but it's not satisfactory to the firefighters. So that's, you know, why we're looking for your direction here.
Great.
I have a few questions.
Councilmember Hellman.
Thank you.
I'll call on you.
Thank you. Chief, thank you for being here this evening, particularly when you're under the weather. If you wouldn't mind putting the presentation back up. And first, just want to start out by saying that does not sit well with me at all that the station has gone 50 years without any renovations. So I guess apologies on behalf of the town for 5 decades of, you know, I guess neglect is a big word, but it's not okay with me that you've waited this long. So option 2 in the staff report, the cons say that it doesn't address the deficiencies of flood risk. And, you know, the $337,000, I think you said that's over $500,000 in today's dollar. I'm just really concerned. We know this region floods. There's every reason to believe it's going to flood again. And Lauren, I don't know if you want to chime in on this, but does it make sense to include, if we're for any option that we explore, unless it's like a real short-term thing, and when we go for a longer-term vision to relocate, does it make sense to include flood mitigation? I mean, I don't want to spend $1.5 million only to have to turn around next year because we have a flood and have to fork out another $500,000 when we were under construction. Why didn't we just do what we needed to do at that time?
May I start, if that's okay, just in terms
Yeah.
because that's sort of my role as the kind of big vision. So you're right, and that's part of our concern is that investing a lot of time and effort in that location that is a flood risk. There are things that we could do. We could potentially build, a flood wall around that. We don't know the cost yet of that, and it would need to be designed, and it would protect in the right circumstances that current building, that existing building, from being completely wiped out or having major issues. So that's an option, but it takes, time and money to do that. I think we are all aligned in the idea that the long-term vision of having a fire station, a modern fire station that is seismically sound, that is outside of the flood zone. It's very concerning to me that we have our first responders first hit in an emergency. It should be just the opposite. So the question before you is really, do you want to invest in that location? And, maybe send us back to look at a flood wall and what that would cost and how long it would take to design. Or do you,
sorry, Heather, are you saying that flood wall would be in scope for any of these options or separate?
We have not estimated the cost of that.
I know,
wall,
but
so
are
it's
you
not in scope for any of those costs that we've projected for you so far.
Okay.
Does that help? And then I want to see if Lauren has any additional, I know you've dealt with other flood walls in the past.
Right. There are probably some different alternatives that can be looked at for protecting against a flood. Some of it is making sure that whatever area gets flooded within the building might be of materials that won't get wet, like changing out sheetrock with something else so that the sheetrock doesn't get damaged within a certain level. The challenges within this location is, there's things that can be done, but you can't necessarily put a flood gate or a flood barrier in front of the gates, in front of the roll-up doors, because you need to roll those vehicles out in the event of an emergency. In the event that it's going to flood, Park Road will be flooded. So not if we're able to protect the building from flood damage, it still impairs their ability to move their vehicles out onto the street. But there are probably different alternatives and different solutions, ranging from adding plastic barrier around the perimeter of the inside so that it doesn't get water damaged, not having things that can be damaged by the water on the outside, all the way up to lifting and raising the driveway and somehow raising the apparatus bay if that's even possible. So right now it's very early on in that stage. And I would also just point out that in the event that we have a flood, it will not only be the fire station that we're going to have to pay for to fix. It will also be town hall and the police station and potentially the corporation yard. So while your point is very well taken, it's flooded before, it may flood again. We need to take a look at that. Going forward, it's in the event that it does happen and we apply for FEMA funds for repair, we may end up meeting some challenges with FEMA saying you're not going to be able to reconstruct the way that you had it before because you're in a flood zone and we're not going to give you money to allow this to happen again. So there's a lot of things that are on, but to your specific question, there are probably a number of different steps or things that we can do to protect the building.
Okay. And then, Chief, option two, doesn't include the option one is the only option that has the additional bathroom, right? Option two is just a upgrade of the bathroom, right?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know what the I have a couple other questions. So come July, when we are fully staffed, I mean, obviously, no matter what we discuss and direct this evening, we're not going to be ready. So what are we facing a trailer situation regardless?
No, I don't think we are. I'm sorry, I can't tell if are you looking over at me?
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Okay. Oh, there we go. There we go. I got a different angle on the camera. No, we are not facing a trailer situation. I have been working with our facilities battalion chief to see what we can do to temporarily accommodate what the additional firefighter in the existing living spaces that we have that will provide some privacy. And but it'll just be a temporary fix until there's a decision made.
Okay. And then what are the investments in Station 20? And did 19 have them as well?
No, so 19 did not have them. Fire Station 20 did. In you mean by investments as far as the actual scope of the project?
Yeah.
So Fire Station 20 is pretty much what we're doing there is we are at least as of today, we are raising the floor because it, as some of you may know, it actually sits over a creek. Which does kind of give it a little bit of an advantage because it is a bit higher than the creek. We're raising the floor and we're pretty much redoing the entire building other than the engine room. So we're putting in 3 new bedrooms, 2 new bathrooms, new kitchen, new day room, extending the footprint of the building and modifying it in a way that the fire station will be a drive-through fire station. So the fire engine does not have to block the road. It will be able to drive through the back of the fire station.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Other questions?
Oh, do you know the price tag on that?
I thought it was
Sorry.
over 2 million, right? Do you know what it is, Chief
Yes.
Mahon?
Yes.
Over 2 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Slated, I would, as of kind of what we were looking at was about 2.25, I think.
Okay.
That's as is the last official estimates. We may need to there's these things are very dynamic. So we're currently looking at some options to see how we can reduce the actual cost of the latest cost estimate that we got back to bring it back down within budget.
Thank you, Chief. I have a question I see Vice Mayor Blash has a question.
Yeah, I mean, you said it's built over a creek. Is it in a flood zone or is it just built over a creek and not likely to flood if the floor is raised?
Yeah, so it is in a flood zone, but if you raise the floor up, then the actual living space will not flood. But to do that, if you raise the floor up, obviously you're going to have to raise the ceiling up too, which then kind of, one thing leads to another. And then it's kind of easier just to knock down most of the building and rebuild it.
And Chief, I've seen the high water mark at Station 20, and I was around during that period. I think it was just minimal flooding into the fire station itself because it's high enough. Is that right? Or at least what I saw on the high water mark.
Is that you're
Station
talking
20?
Fire Station 20, yeah. It made it in the door. I've heard. I wasn't working that day, but I think it made it in in the door like an inch or two. So I don't even know if it got into the entire station.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. So, one of the things I'm thinking of is the value engineering. What I would like to see is if we could do that quickly and really come back with a more firm discussion of option 2, because it seems like a little bit of the middle ground. And I'm not sure, Chief, when you say does not address all building deficiencies, I'm just wondering what that entails. Not necessarily, I know that there are certain things the firefighters would like, but when you say all building deficiencies, are you talking about ADA and all that? I mean, to me, that stuff is like, you can't walk away from that.
Yes, yeah, you're right. It doesn't address any of the things called out in the plan check report. And some of that also, can be taken as all of these options. I mean, it really doesn't account for some of the items that are going to need to be replaced here in the future with HVAC systems and things of that nature. We've just been kind of hanging, getting through on a year by year with repairing things, and things are starting to dilapidate and get old.
Okay, well, let me ask our town manager and public works director, how quickly, I would like to see us really value engineer this quickly and bring it to the next meeting, or if need be, somehow try to hold a special meeting the week before just on this item so we could provide. I mean, I feel like I don't have enough to go on, and so I'm kind of wondering about how quickly we could do that so we would have more information, because my feeling is, I think the chief said that cost, I don't know we know what that cost is, but if you add on things like ADA, firewalling, seismic retrofit, I don't think it's coming in much less, with the exception of, one less bathroom. But how quickly could we do that so that we could have a better feel for what this option 2 is?
I'll let Lauren answer, how quickly he thinks we can get it done. But just to be clear, what we would be doing is going back to the designer and saying, okay, we're value engineering this, we're taking this out, we're trying to get, this cost down a little, and then it would come back, they would send it, we've had a book of estimation with every, here's the sheetrock, here's the electrical, all of those things. And so that would be generated again so that we could have this next iteration of the costs, and that we would also want to send to Coastland or whatnot. Probably, I'm doubting that we could get all of that done and go through Coastland before October 16th, but perhaps, Lauren, let me know, we could come back with an estimate.
I mean, at least a better estimate of what
Are
we're
we going to take
talking
public
about.
comment before we
Well, I'm still asking questions.
Okay.
So I would like to ask questions too. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Kohler. I will have to go back to the designer and see how quickly we can turn around. Luckily, the designer that we've been using is aware of some of these challenges. And so this won't be a completely new concept for this, for our designer. We've already been kind of going back and forth on this. So that will help in the period of time. I think that being able to come back before October 13th with all of the 16th with the type of package that we've produced previously would be a real tough pull, but we would be able to, I think, come back with some, better numbers, perhaps not through an estimate or certainly not through a Coastland review, but we could come back from, I think we may be able to have some update for the council and then can go from there.
Okay, and thank you very much. And then another question. In the staff report, you talked about the idea, so we have in the budget something like 200,000 or more, maybe it was 600,000 to do this work. I know you speak to Heather, potentially borrowing money from Sleepy Hollow Fire. I thought they could only loan up to $1 million, and then, or potentially money from the county. Is that something that's doable if we picked the higher option? And I don't know that we're picking, I think we're just trying to give you direction tonight, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I have had some preliminary discussions with Sleepy Hollow. We know that the county is willing to loan money. And so those are options up to $1 million. I think it is possible to get that loan and to be able to pay for it over 5 or 10 years, whatever's needed. We won't be using bond funding for that. That's not the way that the bond is written or intended, if it passes. And letting us know that you want to direct us towards option 1 or option 2 will start a chain of events where I'll start to, really get down to brass tacks with either Sleepy Hollow or the county about how much they can loan, what kind of security they need, how we're going to be able to structure those payments. And that I would bring back to council. I wouldn't be doing that on my own. I would be bringing back that information for your potential approval.
And just one quick, so for each one of those, you think you could borrow up to $1 million only, correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good. So let's open it up to public comment, and reminder, we're all neighbors here, and let's see what we can
Relax.
do for 2 minutes.
Okay. First off, Lauren, to possibly save you some money, and Dan, I gave Chris Moran your original as-built plans for the town hall, fire, and police. So you had a basis to look at without redesigning and remeasuring. 1, 2, Dan, if your firefighters need a place to reside during that period of time, I would love to have you guys. So just tell me how much space, park your trucks. You're always good. 3, if we're looking at spending a lot of money, this could be the right opportunity and time to buy School Street Plaza. School Street Plaza would be a superior place for the fire department because they have a line of sight, which means that they can see things going on around them. They can start their heavy equipment with takes inertia to get going and get that mass going down the road. So it's a lot safer. This would also be the right time because if you made that trade before there's any sort of development, you could move those same housing entitlements and zoning down to this location. They could then hit flood district 9 and get money to actually elevate it above the floodplain. Lauren started saying something and didn't quite finish articulating it was, yes, you could put in a wall to protect the building, but then there's no egress for the equipment so that the equipment could be operational for the town. And last but not least, I believe Stephanie sits on the committee or liaison for the different fire departments for the allocation of funds. And I know that it's illegal for the firefighters union to behest, which means to command a donation to Stephanie to stop the recall for her for $5,000. I also know that the fire union was sued prior in this town because I have the complaint and subpoena from the California Fair Political Practice Commission for a similar action. So I hope Stephanie would give that money back. Thank you.
Thank you. I would ask people not to call out council members or people in the audience. Thank you. Frank?
Frank
thank
Yeager
you.
from the Cascades. The worst of the floods since the firehouse was built, it was in 1982. And that was a tough one on us. It flooded in 2005 also, but it wasn't as bad as 1982. So a question, I've got a couple of questions. Like one, where will the quarters for the female firefighter paramedics be located? The captain's quarters on the first floor would be ideal, an ideal interim spot. I'm concerned about the proposal to add $1.5 million loan to the town's debt and piecemeal our whole complex, fire, town hall, etc. You know, an alternate site for the firehouse could be the town-owned parking lot adjacent to the pavilion and the ball field. Should the town need a ladder truck for firefighting for tall buildings in the future, that parking lot could accommodate a ladder truck in the firehouse. You know, the future need of town hall has to be taken into consideration too. And getting the extension over the creek out of there, removing that and somehow reusing maybe the firehouse, current firehouse upstairs for town hall, to how town hall uses makes sense. I mean, it's going to flood again. You know, when that was proposed to be built there, Ben Albritton, I was concerned that it would flood if we built over the creek. Ben Albritton, the town engineer, said, "Frank, you and I will never see this building flood in our lifetime." I've already seen it flood twice, so I think we got to look at the big picture, and not just trying to interim project to accommodate firehouse. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Todd Greenberg, downtown Fairfax. I think the fire department and the police department know that I'm big supporters of them, and I want to make everything happen that is financially feasible, and look for creative ways that maybe aren't being considered this evening on how to do that, and maybe come up with a better solution. As Frank said, it's flooded before. What hasn't been mentioned tonight is that most of downtown Fairfax is a flood zone. What hasn't been mentioned related to floods is that there's only $90,000 allocated in the budget for storm drain work. Maybe there's some grants coming, but if you're really concerned about flooding, maybe you'd be allocating more money to storm drains and more money for flood prevention. And then we wouldn't be having this discussion about putting up walls that don't really make sense around that. But maybe, as Frank was saying, on the bigger picture, maybe what we should be thinking about that isn't presented here, that should be presented before the town council decides to spend public money, is if we do need greater capabilities at the fire department, especially since this town council has approved 60+ foot buildings throughout downtown Fairfax, especially since the School Street Plaza just sold for $12 million to an Arizona developer, and everybody's been evicted there. Why don't we consider actually doing this right for the fire department and evaluating the different sites that will cost more money, but would provide robust capabilities for the huge growth that this town council has planned for Fairfax? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Park Bell. Anecdotal accounts from Frank and from someone who used to live at the corner over there said the park was 3.5 feet deep of water in the 2005-2006 flood. So really doesn't matter how high you raise the building, unless you're going to raise the entire street 3.5, 4 feet, and even that's no guarantee. I think the parking lot next to the pavilion, School Street Plaza, obviously would be an excellent site to consider. And the other thing is that when you start opening up old buildings, you come across things you didn't expect. So you can easily see 2 million, 2.25 million become 3. So I think that what you need to do also is to get bids on what it would cost to build a new station with the amenities on a place that is not in a flood zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other speakers in the room? Seeing none, are there any speakers on Zoom? Seeing none, bringing it back to the council for deliberation. Councilmember Cutrano.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One quick point from a public comment about stormwater, storm drain. At our last meeting, you might recall that we were discussing our American Rescue Plan monies that we received. So we have approximately $1.6 million that we're using for storm drain improvement. It's actually on Park Road, a lot of those improvements. So that's in the packet from last month, August regular meeting. If you want to go check out what we're doing related to storm drain, storm water management. But with regard to the item before us tonight, I appreciated some of the comments that Mayor Kohler was making earlier. I actually had a question if the chief is still with us. Tied to that, just to confirm my understanding of option 2 is option 2 would not seismically retrofit our fire station, nor would it deal with any of the flooding issues. Is that correct?
Correct. You're correct.
Okay. So I feel like that's like a pretty big glaring thing for me, in addition to all the timeline stuff that I mentioned earlier, but it seemed like the timelines aren't going to be too dramatically different for options 1 or 2. I think Mayor Kohler mentioned that, even option 2 might not be, even if we value engineered it, it might not be that much less than option 1 if some of these things are, just fundamental to repairing our town facilities, whether it's a seismic retrofit or ADA improvements, triggering that much work in the facility. But I think option 1 stands out as a interesting and important investment, regardless of whether or not we want to look at other sites over the next 3 to 5 years and plan for building something in the next 10 to 25 years, a new fire station. I don't know how long that's going to take. There's the community process for looking at sites. There's what sites are actually available. And then there's everything that comes with designing and then fundraising and then building the site. So even if we're thinking about a future site, which I think it is good to think about those sorts of things, and I'm glad that you're doing that, Chief. I think that's a really important function, the same way it's an important function for Town Manager Abrams. I think the pragmatic piece of this still brings me back to like investing in the facilities we currently have, regardless of what's going to happen in 20 to 25 years. And not only making sure that our firefighter paramedics that spend half their lives in that building are comfortable, but making sure that we future-proof the buildings we have for adaptive reuse the way that Mr. Egger mentioned. I totally agree, and it's something I've talked about with both the chief and with Town Manager Abrams as well, but there's definitely a use case knowing our staffing space constraints for the town as it is, that if we do eventually move our fire station at some point, there's adaptive reuse, and it'd be great to future-proof the facility and make investments such that we could reuse Station 21 for other purposes. I can't imagine that we're just going to get rid of it and turn it into a parking lot if we move the fire station somewhere else. So, a lot of those considerations come together and crystallize for option 1 as the primary focus for me. Obviously that requires, more investment. One of the questions I had for Town Manager Abrams and for Chief Mahoney at this point too is, when we're thinking, like, it's crazy to me that our fire station is not, seismically prepared. The same way it's crazy that it's built in the floodplain, but here we are. But our main emergency response team is in the most precarious situation, and they're living in that situation. It seems like we need to do everything we can to remedy that. I'm curious if we've had any conversations with our friend Stephen Torrance, who we had here last month as well, about whether or not there's any external funding available to do some of these fire station resiliency types of projects. It seems to me that if we did go for a bigger scoped project that was really about making sure our busiest station in the Ross Valley Fire Department, Station 21, is resilient to all of these types of disasters. It would seem to me that there might be funding, or we could go to our state partners and talk to them about securing some additional funding. But are you, either of you, familiar with any of those opportunities, or have you talked to Office of Emergency Management at the county to see if there's funding available for those sorts of things? Because I think that's a great next step, no matter what.
Yeah, I was trying to explore every option to find some money to look at these options that I presented here, and then also a vision to move the fire station. And what I did was we work with a grant writer that I'm pretty close with, and I reached out to the grant writer and asked him if he was aware of any type of funds that were available to either help us in our fire station remodel, or help us relocate our fire station out of a flood zone. And he pretty much said that he wasn't aware of any grants that were such like that. I ended up looking into it a little bit more with FEMA, and they do have some flood mitigation grants and things of that nature, but a lot of those grants are really designed around putting in pump stations and things of that nature to protect communities or more than one building, not to actually relocate a building. But I could definitely dig a little bit deeper and see what I could do to try and foster up some more information on it. About 15 years ago, we did receive grant funding, and I can't remember who it was through, but we received grant funding to place fire sprinklers in all of our fire stations. So that's why we have sprinklers at all the fire stations, is because we got a grant to do that. And I want to say that was through the state, but I can look into that more.
I just want to add something. Several years ago, then Councilmember Weinsoff and I were looking very closely into moving town hall, moving the fire station. And we did look for grant money at the time. And at the time, there wasn't grants available to do that. Now, I think it's great digging deeper. Maybe there is some states kind of in a world of hurt right now, but maybe the feds. So good. Councilmember Cutrano, did you have more?
No, I think that covers most of my initial feelings about this, but it seems to me that, option one is the most prudent choice long-term for the town, regardless of whether or not we're going to find another site in the decades to come or not. I think we're still going to maintain these facilities that we have here. We're not just going to knock everything down. And we should probably make those investments both for, the benefit of the people who are saving lives in our community, but also just for town operations and improvement of our facilities over time. I don't think it's a piecemeal thing to make these improvements, facility by facility when it comes about. I mean, we've already made valuable investments to this facility with Measure A dollars in recent years, and are trying to make investments in the pavilion as well. But with this coming up, and with the opportunity to partner with Sleepy Hollow and some of the other members of the JPA, I think it'd be worthwhile to bring back updated numbers for option one. So that's where I'll leave it right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Hellman had some comments.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Cutrano. I agree. I just wanted to share some learnings having been on the board, the Ross Valley Fire Department board, in that I'm on board with option one for all the reasons Chance stated, but also knowing how challenging it is to recruit. We have a hard time recruiting, and if we are going to break ground and make some enhancements, I want to do it right, and they deserve it, and they've been waiting. I just wanted to say that, you've got beautiful stations all over the county, new ones in West Marin and San Rafael, and I think Novato as well. And I think we need to do the right thing for our firefighters.
Okay. Councilmember Ackerman?
Yeah, I'm inclined toward, I like the idea of looking more at what option two would actually entail, but it really kind of shades into option one as well. By the time you look at all, it seems like option one has been costed out more and comes out larger. Option two hasn't been really fleshed out. And as you flesh it out, the number will go up. So I personally, I hate to do things half-ass, and you know that. And so I'm inclined toward option one, which does utilize the existing space a lot better. There is an existing room in the upstairs that was earlier in an earlier era before the telecommunications and so forth that we have now, that was designated as an emergency operations center. It's pretty much unused at this point. And so that's the beauty of option one, is that it actually moves into that space and utilizes it and does a much deeper, addresses more deeply some of the things like the plumbing that are requiring a lot of maintenance. So I also spent quite a bit of time with the IAFF yesterday, and this was mostly what we were talking about, as you can imagine. And I definitely got the clear message that our fire station, compared with others in the county, is looking pretty antiquated, and it's embarrassing that it's been this long that we haven't really touched it. As far as the flood mitigation, and I certainly agree that ultimately we'd like to figure out how to move everything out of the flood zone, but that's a bigger project than we can handle now. But we have been looking at it. It's not something that nobody's thought of. It's just something that we haven't figured out how to pull it off. It's quite expensive. But with regard to possibly a wall that would divert the floodwaters to some extent, it would seem to me, and I don't know the details, but it would seem to me, just in terms of construction, that shoring up the building, as option one calls for, shoring up the building for earthquake stability, is going to probably involve those lower walls, because as I look at that building, I see a building that doesn't have a front wall because it has the doors. And so it's sort of your classic thing where you need a lot of shear strength in those walls. So I would guess that there's going to be work done on those walls, and it would seem like it would be something to look at in terms of doing the design work so that addresses keeping the water out of the building, except in the front. Now, the front, if it comes up as high as the front driveway, and the flood line on the front of the building is something like 2 feet off the ground. The ground being the top of the driveway where you come up with the truck. So it's 2 feet higher than that. So it goes into the building. But thinking about what's in that lower floor, one specific question: currently there are sleeping quarters on the first floor, and with option one, would the sleeping quarters then not be on the first floor anymore? Would they all be on the second floor? Would that be a possibility in order to just limit the amount that gets damaged in flooding? I'm just thinking about how to
Chief,
think about it the best way.
Chief, did you want to?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
there?
I can answer that. There's not enough room upstairs to have 3 separate dorms upstairs. So we would have 2 dorms upstairs, and we would continue to utilize the dorm space downstairs, which would be the captain's quarters downstairs.
Okay. Vice Mayor Blash?
Yeah. Let's see. I think one thing that's difficult for me with this decision is we have so little information on option 2 that it's really hard to assess. Like, it's easier to say 1 or 3, but not what 2 is. So things that concern me is how long it would take to get more information on that. And then, we're sort of hearing that we don't know if it will maybe trigger other requirements, and we We just don't know how much it would cost if it would be, how, you know, on a scale of magnitude, how different from option one. I'm just going to also say that, like, I personally would love the idea if we did a long range planning effort. It seems like we're always patching things and making these sort of rush decisions to patch things. But, you know, we talked at one point, buildings have come up for sale, and it didn't seem like the public was super excited about buying that land. So, you know, I like the idea of a long range planning process and worry about the statements in the staff report that say that, you know, taking this option might make it harder to do a plan where we actually move the fire station. And that seems to only be attached to option one. I'm not sure if that's attached to option two. I don't know if somebody can sort of speak to how important that consideration is.
I can speak to that. I mean, I think that was a bit of a projection that, you know, we see community input and the council's input at times of, you know, we just invested X amount. And so, you know, do we want to talk about a bigger, longer version or vision? And so there's always, you know, a risk that perhaps the council, you know, feels like we invest, you know, $1.5 million in the current station. Will you be interested in talking about the next step, replacing it? We know that vision would take years, right? There's a whole process to doing that. So it's really a judgment call on your point.
Okay, and then I guess the other question I have is, you know, we kind of know that option three is sort of within what was originally maybe projected for this, and all sorts of things have happened that have changed that. I'm just curious about how we accommodate in our budget, you know, option one or two. I mean, we know more about option one and how much that would be. We still don't know about option two. We could, I mean, I understand that we could take out a loan or two loans, whatever. But, you know, how would we accommodate paying that back over time?
Right. So, I mean, we would need to determine that. But if you imagine $1 million loan over 5 years, that's going to be at least, you know, 5 sections of payments for $1 million plus some interest. So we would need to be able to identify that funding. We have been able to identify some funding for the project each year. But, you know, we pay as you go for $1.5 million will not be possible. We'd have to get a loan. So we'll have to bring that to you as part of the whole budget. That's part of the comprehensive budget look.
Right. So we would be looking at whether we can raise more funding somehow or whether there's something we could cut, basically, right?
Well, raising funding is a loan, right? There's no other options really for us to raise funding directly for this. And then other things that could be cut or general, you know, raising revenues, which tend to be slow and steady, right? So things like looking at fees, looking at all those things that go into the general fund.
Okay.
So I was saying, if you want to raise revenues for any purpose that would go into the general fund, these costs come out of the general fund, then you could look at, you know, could we generate more sales tax? Could we generate more fees? Those kinds of things, but they tend to be slow and steady. They're not big jumps like $1 million next year.
Right. And then the final question I have is, you know, if we were to embark upon some sort of planning process that looked at, you know, we have to do something. I'm clear on that. Like one way or the other, we have to do something about the situation because it's not tenable as it is, in terms of either accommodating an additional firefighter, but even accommodating the firefighters we have right now. But, you know, how long does it usually take people to do these long range planning processes where eventually they identify land and move their facilities or what have you? I mean, what kind of a timeline would we be looking at for that?
I would say that's typically a 5 or even 10 year process, and it starts with things like daylighting this issue. I don't know how much, before I got here, the council has considered the condition of the facilities, their location, their age, what the expected lifespan of those facilities are. We have in the budget for this fiscal year to do a facilities assessment, so we'll have a better sense of, the sort of total need. But that's a process. So we'll do a facilities assessment. We'll be talking about that with the council and public, and exploring all of those needs, analyzing, where are the gaps, and then being able to envision, are there changes or updates that need to be done, when, where. It takes typically, for a town, there are workshops that are not within a council meeting, but just workshops for residents to understand all of those different issues. And then, you could have perhaps a committee or a subcommittee of the council looking at that, bringing that back to the council over several iterations. There are also iterations that have to be done as you get closer and closer to what do we want. Then as you see, we get a first estimate, and then we take it to the plan check, and they have additional layers that we need to estimate on top of that. And then we put it out to bid, and that's a reality check, right? Was our estimate correct in the market today? And then it just keeps going until you get to the point where you're ready to do some construction.
So I'm just going to say the concept that any one of these levels would possibly preclude people's willingness to accept a new location for the fire station is really just an assessment of what's the tipping point in terms of dollar amounts that makes it less likely that people will want to invest again after they've already invested in that.
Yeah, I would say that's correct. And it's really, it depends on the council. It depends on the residents in town and their willingness to kind of see that longer term vision.
Right. And then I just have a lot of questions about the process too. So tonight we are going to give direction. And if people give direction to do, number 1 or number 3, that's all that you're going to consider, and you're going to bring it back to us.
Right. So what I've heard so far is there seems to be a majority leaning towards option 1, which will send me on a path, and Lauren on a path, and the chief on a path of getting more information about loans that we would need to take in order to be able to finance that option, going back with the designer and the coastland to get real information about, okay, what do we have to do to meet code for this building, for today's code, and then bringing those back. So there's still iterations to be done here. There are a lot of points at which things continue to evolve so that we can bring that back to you. But it would be unrealistic for someone to say, you promised us it was going to be $650,000 and now it's up to, 1.5. This is the way a project goes. And for people who've worked on their own homes, I'm sure they've seen that as well, is that you design the project and then you go and get the permits, and that's another level. And then you go and bid the project, and that's another level.
I just want to say, I think if you get direction tonight for option 1, do you think you would be bringing it back at the October meeting for that level of detail, or would it be the November meeting, which is just a couple weeks later? I'm assuming it'd probably be more like the November meeting.
I see the town manager looking at me for an answer. So if we have direction tonight with option 1, we have a significant amount of information already gathered on that project. We can certainly get our designer moving as quickly as possible on that design. Again, if we wanted to submit it to Coastland for a full review, their period of time to review plans, I'm not certain of. So we'll have to find that out. But certainly we have information regarding the what generated these costs, and that has been pretty well developed.
Okay, well, let me speak for a sec. Just, I want to say I was first interested in the value engineering, but really thinking about it for the deficiencies, I wouldn't want us to do anything without ADA accessibility and without seismic retrofit. And I'm not sure about the firewalling. So personally, I feel that if we value engineered this for something, one less bathroom, we're coming back pretty close with the same amount of money. And so I'm not really sure that it makes sense to pursue option 2, because I really think we'll be looking at, 100, 150,000, maybe 200,000 less. It's not much difference. And I also think just one thing, I mean, people are thinking about the future. I know the public safety building that San Rafael built was over $35 million, and it's a wonderful building. And they have a much larger budget than us. So we would have to really look at the future. And maybe it's not this council, maybe it's a subsequent council. So I think even though I appreciate what staff did and what the chief did to try to put together as much as you could for us to be able to make a decision tonight as far as direction, I just really think we have more information on option 1. I don't think option 2 is going to get us much except more time delay. And I would insist, as I said before, that if we did value engineer, we'd have to include ADA accessibility as well as seismic retrofit and probably the firewalling. The other thing I would say for option 1 is something that Lauren mentioned, is looking at, so I'm hearing you have a majority looking at option 1. And I realize it's expensive, but construction costs have gone up so much. I don't think there's any way we're getting around this. But I would also look at the kinds of things that Lauren mentioned about don't put sheetrock on the bottom floor. Let's look at what we can do. I think this is kind of capturing some of what Councilmember Hellman was alluding to. Maybe not the flood wall, because I think that's going to add a tremendous amount of expense. We could certainly get some sort of quick estimate on what that would be. But let's look at what we can do. What the reality is, that building will flood, as Frank says. Somebody told him it would never flood, and it's flooded twice. So let's do what we can to protect that building as much as possible. And to go back what Lauren mentioned about or Dan mentioned about the original cost, I think you said it would be over $500,000 with just looking at CPI, not including the increase in cost estimates. So what was done in 2005 probably is closer to 3/4 or even $1 million in today's dollars, just because costs have escalated so much if we have a flood. And we have plenty of insects. I am an entomologist. Not that that will help us. Oh, nice. So I would just say, I think you have direction from the majority of the council. Everyone, I'm not sure where Vice Mayor Blash is, but it seems like let's pursue option 1, and let's come back as soon as possible with the details ironed out so we can move forward. And I also want to say, Chief Mahoney, thank you for also pointing out that, there's a way to accommodate all firefighters in the building as much as possible during this process. So I think you have the direction you need. Vice Mayor Blash, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I had really wanted to lean towards option 2 because I am concerned about our budget, but I think that these arguments are compelling. So I'm okay with that. I'm a bit distracted by the bat, but it's eating the insects, so it's lovely. So I'm fine with this decision. Thank you.
Okay, and Councilmember Ackerman, I just want to say, some of us have to take a quick break.
Okay, I'll be quick. It sounds like we have direction, as the mayor said, and I just wanted to, I appreciated Councilmember Catrano's initial comments, especially about that when someday we do move the fire station, we don't know how long that'll be, but that building, we won't be raising that building. We'll be, I mean, raising as in destroying the building. The building will be there. It will now be well improved. And so just if both the chief and you and the designers can think about how to design it so that it's as close to being a usable building upstairs for other purposes, that would be appreciated. And then also think about utilizing the existing walls as a flood barrier. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, you have enough direction. And thank you very much. We're going to take an 8-minute break. So we will be back at 8:42. I'm wondering if we could dim the lights so maybe the bat and the bugs would go outside for a sec.
Excellent idea. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 3. This is adopt a resolution rejecting all bids for 2024 slurry seal project and reissue a notice inviting bids. And I believe this is our Public Works Director, Mr. Umbertus, please.
Thank you, Mayor Kohler. Tonight, to start off with my presentations, I don't actually have a presentation for the screen tonight. So if you have any questions after I'm complete with my statement, please let me know. The first item for tonight is, in fact, a recommendation from staff to reject all bids for the 2024 slurry seal project. We went out to bid on this project with an engineer's estimate of approximately $550,000. We ended up getting 3 bids for this project. The lowest bidder was at $937,000, which was obviously significantly higher than our engineer's estimate. So due to the fact that we do not have that type of funding available for streets and roads in our project, it's our recommendation that we reject all bids, seek direction from the council to value engineer to review the project scope, and then to go out for a rebid later on in the season, more likely in December or January, and then hope to be able to do a project in the spring and fall, or in the spring and summer of next year. There are some reasons for the discrepancies between the engineer's estimate and the actual bids. And we did some review of our own estimate numbers, and we also reached out to the low bidder and asked a few questions of them as to why they came up with certain numbers. So I'm happy to answer questions on those if you'd like. So please let me know what you would like to do.
Just quickly, PEI's cost estimation has not had an excellent track record. I'm wondering if we should be looking at Coastland for future cost estimates who tend to be closer to the mark.
There are certainly, other options for getting secondary estimates or asking for other companies to do estimates. One of the challenges for doing any type of estimate is that any estimator is basically taking publicly available information about the cost of materials and labor and applying that to basically a spreadsheet. What we have experienced here and on this particular project that I can talk to is that Fairfax has a unique topography, which had an impact upon the ability to place slurry seal in an effective and quick way. So for instance, a slurry seal applicator would like to do 20,000 to 30,000 square feet a day of application. Because of the way our roads are built, with very narrow roads and steep and traffic issues, they believe they can only do about 8,000 square feet a day. So that's a significant reduction in their efficiency. That has an effect upon traffic control. One of the other items that was really high in the bid versus our estimate was traffic control. I was happy to see that they took traffic control very seriously because we know that that's an issue within our community. What they had to do was, one, take a look at the winding streets and how they were going to set up flag people and do traffic control. Because they weren't able to do as much application as they would normally be able to do, that means that that traffic control now gets extended in terms of duration. So you're paying for more days. So those were two of the big factors that came up. The other issues that we've looked at is we put the bid out kind of at the end or at the beginning of when the work actually begins. So most contractors' backlog of work has already been established. So we tried to squeeze in to that. Slurry contractors are already busy trying to meet other contracts that they have in other communities. The ability to get the materials or even traffic control, they're also busy because they're doing all these other projects. So we kind of got into a position, I think, of when we went out to bid, that it created some challenges for the town. Our hope is that by going out in December to have a springtime project, we'll be at the beginning of that. So we'll be trying to get contractors who are hungry for work to fill up their backlog before the summer. So we hope that that will come down. But certainly to your question on PEI and their estimate work, while I understand your concerns, if we hire a company like Coastland, who isn't familiar with Fairfax, the challenges are going to be similar to them. They're going to not know what might be our specific or unique challenges here. They're going to be looking at line items just like PEI put together, and they're going to be placing standard numbers. Now we can work with them and say, we know that traffic control is going to be higher because of our unique situation. So add a multiplier. But that is one challenge of by bringing in somebody new who isn't as familiar with our town, we run the same risk of that. So I hope that answers some of your question on that.
Okay, just one slight beating it to death. Coastland's been doing work for us for a number of years, so I think they are probably relatively familiar with Fairfax. I know where they are. We just saw their office, but I just want us to, maybe this is a lesson learned, but I don't think PEI is familiar with Fairfax. And the couple of things you mentioned at the beginning seem to me things that you drive around Fairfax for 15 minutes and it's pretty obvious that you can't be jamming through like you would on Sir Francis Drake. So, okay, well, I'm sorry to beat that to death, but I'm known for that. So other questions of staff? I see a finger over there, Councilmember Cutrano.
Thank you, Mayor. I had two quick questions for you, Public Works Director Umbertus. Thank you very much for the presentation too. So the first question is related to the sort of scope of bidding processes overall. So I've been under the impression in the past that projects that have a larger scope are often more competitive in the sense that you might get more bids. People want the bid or want the project if it's big enough or juicy enough. And so that, they'll give more competitive pricing or something if that works out for them. Am I right in understanding that? And am I right in understanding that topography of Fairfax is such that it doesn't really, like, those considerations don't matter as much in this circumstance, because no matter what, like, it's more days of work, it's more days of paying people to do flagging and stuff like that, and it's less about the competitiveness of the market and the bidding right now. It's just, in this circumstance, it was more about the type of work and the duration of the work.
Thank you, Councilmember Cutrana, for the question. So in this particular case, we received 3 bids, and some of our other projects we received typically, 4 to 6, and we did have one project where I think we had 14 bidders. So it varies on the type of work. Obviously, there are probably a few companies that specifically do slurry work, whereas there are many general engineering contractors. So that's always going to be a change in the types of and numbers of bids that we get. In this particular case, the 3 bids that we received, the first was $937,000. The second was, $1,193,000, and then the other one was $1,292,000. That tells me that there's not a gigantic spread within those 3 numbers. It tells me that the scope of work that we put forward was readily understood and that the number simply came in at a percentage point higher. As I go through the spreadsheet, which is a list of each line item that we asked for bidding on, about 80% of the numbers all came in within a few $100s of each other. So for instance, we had, installing the let's see here, installing the, that's a good example here, doing a 24-inch white crosswalk in thermo. Our estimate was $5,400. The price that was given by the low bidder was $5,346. Those numbers all came across very well. The items that really skewed the numbers for this particular project on the low bidder was their traffic control. We estimated 50,000. They brought in 175,000 as their number. The estimate for doing, we asked for clearing and grubbing, and that involves like moving roots and things like that as you're doing some asphalt repair. They came in significantly higher on that. We estimated about $5,000. For some reason, they came in at around $60,000. The second bidder came in at $63,000. That seems like something that we can certainly look at in the next iteration. The other items that we looked at was, as I mentioned, the slurry seal. We were estimating $80,000 for slurry seal. Their number was $296,000. That's a miss. Somehow we missed that. Part of the explanation that we got from the low bidder was that we like to do big, long, straight roads. It's very easy for us to do that because we can do lanes one at a time. Here, if you're going to be doing anything on, say, scenic, you have to lay this material down, wait for it to set, and before you let anyone go on and driving it. So it's a much harder application process. So that number certainly was an issue there. So between the slurry cost and the traffic control cost, that's $350,000 above what we anticipated in our estimate. So there's certainly an issue there. And PEI has expressed their embarrassment at it. And Joe has called me personally and said, I have taken this very personally. He said he was sorry that he wasn't able to attend in person tonight. But that's what occurred. So as we move into a new bid, we are going to have to take a look at these slurry seal numbers and make sure that those are what we want, and try to determine whether or not the seasonal change and when we bid will have an adjustment factor on that.
Yeah, thank you. And that's actually led to my second question, which is I've now heard several times in my short tenure on council that we try to put out these bids and people or these companies are backlogged and they're sort of planning stuff out years in advance, and we're just trying to squeak stuff in, and then it bites us sometimes, or it appears to bite us. And I guess I'm in a future world, hopefully it's all rosy and we have more money to work with from the road bond, and we're able to plan stuff out and bid stuff out in advance, and it's all works out really well like that. But do we have a strategy, or do you have any ideas on how we can avoid this like last minute bid, try to get something in, because it doesn't appear to be working for us.
So I'll accept responsibility for putting this bid out in basically my exuberance to improve the town. And when the council came back and said, we're allocating $550,000 to road improvement, the first thing I wanted to do was improve the roads. So the better option, which I have learned, is that my response should have been, thank you very much for this money. We're going to plan this really well, and we're going to plan on this for next spring, rather than trying to push it in as soon as you approve the budget on July 1st. So that's a little bit on me. Going forward, that's what I need to do, is to say, thank you very much for this budget. I'm not going to spend it right away. I'm going to try to figure out when is the best time to go out to bid. So that's something that
Thank you.
that I'm learning.
And thanks for, accepting. I think it's a shared responsibility, because we're all on a team here trying to figure this out together. But I guess it sounds like spring might be so if we approve our budgets in July, we can expect that it might be more competitive to go out in spring. Is that right?
It would be the best thing to do would be to put out a bid package sometime in the December, period of time in the winter, so that you can have a project start in March or April as soon as the weather turns, depending on the type of work. You don't want to put out a bid too early, because the numbers, are only good for a certain period of time after you award. There are certainly times that you can, state, we're going to put this out to bid now so we can get the money set aside, but the project may not start until, 6 months later. But you run a risk of them, placing a clause that says, if it's over 6 months, our numbers may have to change, and we may have to revisit that. So in terms of construction projects, as we've discussed, there are some storm drain projects that we want to put out to bid. The plan is to get those out to bid in November, December, or actually earlier than that, so that we can have them approved by council before the end of December. But we know that those projects won't start until the spring, when the rains stop. So that's just something that I need to work on, and make sure that when we're planning these projects, we're not trying to do it at the end of summer, before the weather is over. So that's going to be something that I have to look forward to doing over the next 5 years for our standard projects.
Thank you. And then my final question, pardon me for asking so many questions here, but based on everything we've learned and the radically different cost in traffic control, as well as the slurry costs, do you have suggestions about descoping portions, or what are we thinking? I guess I'd love to get a little bit of insight before we go to public comment, to let that marinate a bit.
I have not yet started working with PEI to look at that reduced scope, if that's what's necessary. Certainly, it looks like we'll have to reduce scope if some of these numbers are consistent. The options that have just been floated is, you find easier streets. So maybe the streets that are very narrow and up in the hills don't get that work. That's not an option that I'd like to do. I'd like to do, those streets just as much as I'd like to do the streets on the flat parts. So that's going to have to be a conversation that we have, is what do we do to adjust these numbers? Are there things that perhaps we can do ourselves? So if there's tree and roots and shrubbery that's along the side of the road, the clearing and grubbing, so that you can apply this material, that may be something that we can do ourselves internally, or do it as part of our vegetation management that's already happening. One suggestion from a contractor who bid was, you break out some of the dig out work. So we have a number in here for doing dig outs on certain bad portions of asphalt. Well, by including it in this bid, we're having the primary contractor hire a dig out contractor, and that dig out contractor is going to charge their profit and overhead. So we're paying an additional premium to have the slurry contractor do that work.
Subcontract, yeah.
If we wanted to hire, say, a dig out contractor to come in and do that work, and then have the slurry contractor solely supply slurry, that's a way of saving money. It wouldn't save us $400,000, but it might save us, 40, 50, $100,000.
And it's just a little more logistics on our end of making
then
sure we get the dig out stuff done before the slurry folks want to come. And yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for those answers. Those are all my questions.
Any other questions of staff, or we can go to public comment? Okay, let's go to public comment. Christine, could you set the timer, please?
Lauren, has there been an opportunity to reach out to like Nerviani or Major and Gelati that have also done pavement work in the past for the town? Because sometimes, since this is their forte, they might be able to give you some up to the minute, hands-on suggestions to even improve the bid process, so you can get a nice close little grouping and have something that might better represent what they're doing. Something that also wasn't spoken for, because sometimes people will contact me about this, there's also a concern about staging. So if there's not staging and they're cycling back and forth to San Rafael, especially at the end of the day with workers' comp and people sitting in vehicles and traffic, this is an excessive expense that you could avoid by predetermining where people can stage certain volumes of certain projects. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker, please.
Hi, Todd Greenberg, downtown Fairfax. I'm going to follow up with some additional comments along the lines of what Mr. McIntosh just brought up about process improvement, where we could be thriftier with our public spending. Before I do, and before I get cut off, since there's so little time to speak, I want to point out that these estimates are about 2 times what the PEI estimate was, and that the bond figures that you're using are perhaps also underestimated by 50%. And that rather than that bond funding 23% of the roads, not 40.9%, as is erroneously stated in the description, that it would really only fund maybe 11.5%. So that being said, here's some process improvement suggestions that I won't bill you for. One, as Michael said, there's a lot of local talent. Why not, and this is my suggestion, Lauren, get a list of companies that other local jurisdictions have used. You can do this by emailing each of the public works managers that you meet with on occasion, emailing them and asking them for the list of the companies they've used over the last 5 years and what their experience is with it. And then emailing and writing each of those companies rather than letting them come to you. Proactively go out to them and continue this experience, because what Michael said is the companies aren't from here that gave bids. They're from Sacramento, Hayward, and Sacramento. You've got to pay travel time. You've got to pay lodging time. That's all built into their bids. Why don't we try to keep it local? All right.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please.
Mark Bell, close to downtown Fairfax. So this is the second one that I've seen where the estimate has come in well above what the PEI estimate for the work was supposed to be. If you're dealing with companies who live in Sacramento, like Todd said, yeah, it's going to be quite expensive on top of what a local company would pay. I mean, I was just in Katati for much less in taxes that my friend pays. They have all their roads in excellent condition. Maybe ask the Katati town public works guy who he employs and what their costs are. If you're looking at traffic control, I can't believe it's that that difficult of a position that maybe somebody in town would want to start a company with like high school students and do it at a fraction of the cost. I mean, obviously, we're going to need to think outside the box. And I don't think we need to be limited by things like, well, this is how it's been done for years. Same thing with this bond measures. Like if you do 23% or 11% of the roads, that's going to be it for 25 years. No one's going to pay for another bond measure. That's why I said instead of paying bond companies 1.2 million for debt service, you could do a direct appropriations and pay for things.
Thank you. Are there any speakers on Zoom?
There's one raised hand on Zoom.
Okay. Can
Doug?
Okay, go ahead.
Doug, you're unmuted.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, thank you. Lauren, I wanted to ask you, when you put the bid out in December, have you considered or have you done this in the past, saying to the putting on the bid that you take the work, and I'm making the dates up, between April 1st and August 15th, so that those companies might have a little more flexibility and consider, because these aren't huge jobs, that it might be able to keep the cost down for them to do the work when it's more convenient for them.
Thank you.
And
I'm
and
sorry.
secondly, I want to also commend you for working with Ross Valley Sanitary, and I assume you're doing that with MMWD to coordinate our work with your work, because we both know that saves the town a lot of money. It saves the other agencies a lot of money too. You've been doing that, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Doug. Any other speakers on Zoom?
There are no more speakers on Zoom.
Okay, bringing it back. I just want to say, Lauren, thank you for, we all learn things as we go, and appreciate you talking to that. And also want to say, it's a little out of turn, but I just want to say thank you for having the guys continuing to paint the crosswalks, the Meadow Way Bridge repairs. The guys and you are managing a lot, and we're expecting a lot. So really appreciate your willingness to speak to, we all can learn, and we are a team, as Councilmember Catrano says. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I would. And I'm also just going to say, again, this points out to the fact that Fairfax is a unique place, and we have interesting conditions that sometimes people don't foresee when they're not from here. I would move that we adopt a resolution by the town council to reject all bids for the 2024 slurry seal project and reissue a notice inviting bids.
Second.
Okay, and could we have a roll call vote, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Ackerman.
Yes.
Councilmember Hellman.
Yes.
Councilmember Catrano.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Blash.
Yes.
Mayor Kohler.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to our next item, which again is Lauren Umbertus, and you're going to speak about adopting a resolution awarding a contract with RWR Construction, Inc. for a 103 Roca Drive roadway stabilization and retaining wall project, and authorize the town manager to execute the contract and pay an amount not to exceed $234,643 with an additional contingency of 10% for a project total of $258,107. Okay, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Kohler, for that. 103 Roca Drive is a location where a section of the roadway is slowly creeping down. It's on a steep wall, steep slope above a private residence, and the town has been monitoring this particular location for a number of years. One of the things that we have been doing to monitor this location is that there's what's called an inclinometer that's been placed that measures the soil movement over time, and it certainly has been moving since the installation of that inclinometer. Many years ago, I believe, I want to say before 2000, there was an issue where a portion of that slope did in fact fail at this particular residence. The town went in and built a wall and did some other improvements. They didn't extend that wall all the way along the entire length. And so that's a portion of where we're looking at now for this repair. We received an engineer's estimate from Miller Pacific for approximately $250,000. We placed this out to the marketplace, and we received 6 bids from contractors. The low bid of these 6 was $234,000. So RWR Construction has performed previous work for us, including 145 Canyon. They've also done Scenic and Reedon up here, and also did this Reedon project up here, and then also did a retaining wall on Scenic. So they know our town, and they've done good work for us. What we're asking the council to do is to adopt a resolution allowing us to award this project to RWR with the intention of having them start as soon as possible so that we can complete this work before we enter into the rainy season. The private residence there has expressed some concerns and hopes that we can get this complete because she's watched little pieces of rock crumble down over the years. And so we're confident that we're going to be able to complete that before we enter into the rainy season. We've met extensively with that property owner. In fact, we performed an in-house inspection because she was concerned that the drilling and the other work that was going to be taking place might impact her residence. We took video, took photographs of her residence. We took external photographs as well. She met with the contractor. She knows how to get a hold of me anytime she has any issues. The contractor has indicated that they're going to be able to do almost all of the work from above. So the impact upon her residence and her driveway should be minimal, but she has said that it's possible to use her driveway if we need it. The project is relatively straightforward, soldier pile wall with tiebacks. And the expectation is we'll try to get that started as soon as we get direction from the council to award.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? I want to say, I mean, this is one where not only were we right on with the cost estimate, we were a little under. So Miller Pacific has been really been great.
And thank you for that. And before we go on, I just want to also give a quick update. We did also open up bids for the Tamalpais Berry project. I believe they were on Tuesday. We did get 4 bids for that as well. That estimate, as you recall, we asked council to allow staff to move forward to award if bids came under $400,000. In this particular case, the base bid was also base low bid was also RWR Construction, $252,000. And then the other numbers there were $305,000, $321,000, and $540. Again, that close spread of numbers of 252, 305, and 321 tells me that we have a pretty good handle on those types of estimates.
Excellent.
So just wanted to let you guys know that we will be working with RWR Construction to award that contract based upon your previous authorization to do so. And we're going to get them started as soon as possible as well in order to get that project completed before the winter season. One of the questions I did ask RWR was, you can do both of these projects at the same time, correct? And they said that they can. So we will be working concurrently on 103 Rocca as well as Tamalpais Berry Road.
Excellent. Any questions of staff? It seems like a pretty much no-brainer. Let's go out to public comment. And Christine, could you set the timer, please?
Oh, Todd Greenberg here. I just want to note that this report is concise. It's 37 pages in contrast to agenda item 10, which is 261 pages, but is only on the consent calendar. So we'll only have 8 seconds to talk about that also very important road related item, which should be paid more attention to if you really wanted to raise money from people in the town and tax them for 30 plus years, $40 million. That being said, related to this, I want to thank RWR for an aggressive bid, and I take it doing good work. Page 16, or I'm not sure, there's two different sets of page numbers here, but the bid schedule A, that's real clean, easy to understand. This is important work to get done in the town, particularly before the rains happen. I don't know if anyone's been watching the news recently about Palos Verdes, where the neighborhood, the whole sections are sloughing away, and there's fires from underground cables and igniting. And there's a couple years ago in Sausalito, there was a huge hillside landslide where somebody died, and this has also happened in Mill Valley too. That being said, it's really important to do, but there's nothing in this report about a causative factor. If this has been happening repeatedly in the area, you know, a lot of times this happens when somebody else does construction somewhere else and it alters the riparian flow of the water. Before the town pays for this, or if the town pays for this because it needs to be done, which it sounds like it does, one should look and find out who might be responsible for this sloughing.
Thank you. Any other speakers in the room?
Since you never know what will come out of my mouth, something that you might enjoy hearing. So my property first sold, depending on where you read, in 1836 to 1839 to Domingo Saez. It came out of Spanish land grant. Over in and he kept it till about 1851, sold to Alfred Talafario. Over in San Rafael in 1876, they had the Sailor Bar. And the Sailor Bar was run by a guy by the name of Bresson, and his partner was Prost. Well, they kept the Sailor Bar after litigation. They actually took it over in about 1880 and moved to Fairfax at the La Boheme Hotel, at which time Bresson's brother was still in Paris, and he came over to Fairfax and opened up Fairfax's very first roadhouse, which is now at the Rhino gas station. Bresson's brother, the younger brother, then married and partied with Domingo Saez's youngest daughter, Dominga. And that between the two of them, they spent the entire two-family fortune. And the last expense they have is right below the lower wall in Roca, that I think is 1800 Safran Strait Boulevard, that little square house. That was the last Bresson house before they left Fairfax. And I think they built that in 1912.
Thank you. Other speakers in the room? Are there any speakers on Zoom?
There are no speakers on Zoom.
Okay, bringing it back to the council. I hope we can just have a motion on this.
I can do that. So I would move that we adopt the resolution to award the contract to RWR Construction Incorporated and authorize the town manager to execute the contract and pay the total project amount not to exceed $258,107.
Second.
Okay, so that was Councilmember Ackerman, second Catrona. Roll call vote, please.
Yes,
Madam
Mayor.
Clerk.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Aye.
Councilmember Hellman.
Yes.
Councilmember Catrano.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Blash.
Yes.
Mayor Kohler.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Lauren, and you might need to stay for that one consent item. Sorry, you don't get excused.
No problem.
Before I open consent, I want to say something that I neglected to do at the beginning of the meeting, even though I planned to. I want to dedicate this meeting in memory of former Mayor Wendy Baker. And I'll read something when we do the adjournments. We also lost Jessica Green, who some of you know. But anyway, we're not going to discuss it right now. We'll go to adjournments, but I'm sorry, what?
Last Sunday we lost.
Oh, well, I know, but I'm sorry to hear that, but that is San Rafael. We're talking about our folks, but thank you. Sad to hear. I knew Al. Okay, so let's move to consent calendar. And I want to ask if there's any questions of staff or quick comments. I just have a couple of quick comments that I'll make. And then we'll open up to public comment. Item 12 on the PCAs. Zone 2 includes the Meadow Club, and the Meadow Club is an okay. Item 12 is the PCAs, priority conservation areas, and the Meadow Club is included in that PCA, but that is an unincorporated Fairfax. And I know that the Open Space Committee would like to include it, but I'm not sure how we can include parts that are not in our town. And maybe I'll just make that comment.
Yes, I can answer that if.
Okay, just briefly.
So the MTC does allow us to make those PCAs, including areas which are outside of the town limits, but are within our sphere of influence or planning area is how they refer to it. And so that is the case with the Meadow Club.
Okay, so that's different than LAFCO. When we did the sphere of influence for Upper Ross Valley, we did not include that, but I'm guessing that it's different. ABAG is different with their sphere of influence.
That's correct.
Okay, and the last thing, just item 18 on the police chief contract, when we bring it back for the second, let's add Exhibit A, which was not included. That's the MOU for Fairfax POA.
Yes, we can absolutely do that. And for anyone in the audience who's curious about that, that was on the August 7th agenda. So it's online. You can look at it at any time.
Okay, and just one quick thing on the item dealing with the, I don't really know what the acronym stands for, LSRP. They mentioned that they consulted with the Bike Ped Committee, and the Bike Ped Committee has not existed since before 2015. So I'm guessing maybe they looked at the Bike Ped plan that was in place, and I know we're going to stand that up in the future. It's a small thing, but I just read that and I thought, wow, that's kind of strange because there hasn't been one for a while. So I think it's a good document and I did read through it. So with that, I guess we'll turn it over to public comment, but I just want to read. Consent calendar may improve the entire consent calendar with one action vote. In the alternative, items on the consent calendar may be removed by any town council or staff member for separate discussion and vote. Public comment for items on the consent calendar happens once rather than after each individual item. During the public comment period on consent items, speakers may comment on any items from this section of the agenda. Each speaker will have up to 2 minutes and may only speak once. So with that, I'll open it up to public comment.
Hi, Todd Greenberg. I object to there being 14 items on the consent calendar. That gives me 8.5 seconds to talk per item with only 4 items on the regular agenda. Many of these items should be on the regular agenda. I ask that this council pull items 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 18. That being said, you've never once had the courtesy in all the time that I've been coming here to pull an agenda item, so I don't expect you to now. So I'm going to try to give a quick summary. Items 8, 9, and 18 have to do with wages and COLAs, cost of living allowances. 18 provides for a 6% COLA. 8 provides for a 4% COLA. And 9 provides for a 5 and a 4% COLA. But no homeowners or people providing housing in Fairfax are allowed to get that. You are treating people unfairly, and you've been treating people unfairly, and your process has been unfair. We'll see when it goes to a vote. But in all good conscience, not that I don't think everybody that's working hard deserves a raise, particularly with all the costs going up dramatically. But you can't do this when you're unfairly treating housing providers and jeopardizing people. It's unfair in Fairfax under your rule. Item 5 is the finance reports. You're spending money like crazy. Why don't we get to talk about the finance reports? Item number 6, public employee performance evaluation is talked about in the draft town council meeting minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other speakers in the room? And Todd, if you pick those up from the safe, could you put them back? Or are those your own copies? Okay, great. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Well, you know, somebody reads everything. 14 items, 2 minutes. Pretty interesting. And while costs go up for a variety of reasons, usually none of them actually to do with costs going up, people who rent properties have overhead. They have to pay plumbers, they have to pay carpenters, they have to pay electricians, they have to pay garbage service, they have to pay water, they have to pay electric bills sometimes. So I don't understand why these people are, what was it, 2.85% was what they could raise rents?
Okay.
So in this past year, I believe it was 2.8% or 2.67% was the allowable rent raise. And you're talking in the future, COLAs being approved. I didn't see anything that said, depending on what the COLA actually is for that period. So, you know, you can make any type of estimate you want for the future, but you don't know until the future arrives. So I have to agree with Todd. It's like you have a double standard, and it really makes one wonder why you hate people who provide housing.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Okay, first clarification, the name that I couldn't think of before Prost and Bresson brought that bar, before they came to Fairfax, was Joseph Kapperman. And the reason that's important, we have a San Rafael soda bottle with Kapperman's name on it, a P&B soda bottle from San Rafael from 1879, 1883, and Fairfax has an A. Bresson bottle that would have come from shortly there in the 1880s. I also agree that the consent calendar really combines items that the council feels that it's beneath them to spend the time, or because they are opaque and don't have the security to actually discuss it with the general public. For instance, on there that you brought up was the priority conservation area. Heather is correct. It depends on the sphere of influence. And since your traffic comes through here, that could include that. But for instance, my property was also reached out to with a single conversation because there was not enough time, just like here on this agenda, to really discuss what these things are and how they could possibly benefit the community. But more than anything else, I also cite the COLA. This council continues to reward the hard work that people are doing. Good job. They continue to recognize the cost of living goes up and all these expenses, even for yourself. Absolutely correct. But then when it comes to one section, and this is why it's arbitrary and capricious, people that provide housing for everybody else, including yourself, all of a sudden those people are penalized. And as you make this more and more capricious, this is where it really is a taking, even outside the language. So I really think that some of these issues are coming down, that you will be on the wrong side of this argument. And here is another opportunity where the town council could say, maybe we weren't, really well thought out. Maybe we didn't reach out to the community. Maybe we have an opportunity to try to bring people to the table and make something work, because we certainly want to protect our most vulnerable people, but not penalize everybody else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I see no more speakers in the room. Is there anybody on Zoom?
We have one speaker on Zoom. Doug, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. My understanding over many years is that.
Doug, you
consent
need to
cal-
speak more into your microphone. We can't hear you.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Thank you. My understanding over many years is that consent is routine items. I just don't see how a letter to care is a routine item that shouldn't be on the agenda. And on my online, I see no link to a staff report. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 17 was removed. Any other speakers on Zoom?
There are no more speakers on Zoom.
Okay, bringing it back to the council. Would someone like to make a motion?
Can I,
Sorry, Mayor, if I might,
Okay.
I just wanted to make one change to the minutes on the May 29th
Oh,
minutes. There was a
okay.
vote recorded.
There's a what? I'm
The
sorry.
vote that was recorded for item 2,
Uh-huh.
Councilmember Hellman voted no, and she was listed as an aye, and that needs to
Okay.
be changed
Okay, so when we make the motion, let's make sure we make that change.
with the correction, yes.
Okay, council member. Okay, Katrana.
I just had one comment on the local road safety plan, which is I'm glad that we finally agendized it. We had long discussions about that plan when it was first created at the Transportation Authority and Marin Board. And the information in that plan, coupled with our bike and pedestrian master plan, which obviously we're going to revamp, but those two things together with some of the other things that have been coming out are going to really make some of the upcoming grant cycles really competitive for Fairfax, specifically for Sir Francis Drake from Marinda to Glen Drive or to the town border on the west side of town, and for any bike ped improvements really in the town core, but center Broadway, right around Bolinas, those things coupled with potentially a road bond. But regardless, it's going to make us really competitive for highway safety improvement program grants, or for active transportation grants, or for some of the more local grants like Safe Pathways program from TAM, which Lauren and I and David Parisi at Parametrics have had some initial conversations about. So would just recommend to the public and also to the council to do a second review of some of those high collision network segments that are included there, because it's gonna this data here is going to pay dividends for the coming years for us getting really competitive grant funding. So just wanted to thank staff for agendizing it, and also Lauren for working on it. And yeah, looking forward to bringing some more money to Fairfax from some of these regional and state partners.
Thank you.
And happy to move the consent calendar with that comment and with the correction of the minutes.
Okay, and
that's with the exception of item 17, which was pulled, and with the
we don't
correction.
have to vote on that. That was already done.
Yep.
Okay, so we had, did you second?
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, could you do the roll call vote?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Ackerman,
Yes.
Councilmember Hellman,
Yes.
Councilmember Catrano,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Blash.
yes.
Mayor Kohler.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to note that council reports and comments are in the packet for three of us. A couple of our council members were not able to get theirs in, so I'm assuming they'll do double months next time. And then future agenda items. All right, and then I just want to adjourn in memory of Jessica Green, Bob Hollingshead, and Wendy Baker, and just reading something from Wendy's daughter, Laura. Wendy's community service is a family tradition dating back to her grandfather's uncle, Henry Reedon, who was a proprietor of San Francisco's Washington Brewery, one of the first to do steam beer. Joined with partner Henry Frustek to buy 62 acres in Marin at Fairfax Park for $30,000 in 1905. They are actually credited with building the first pavilion on the West Coast or something of that nature. It's all in the Fairfax Arcadia book done by local historian Mr. Sager. The town park is smaller today and now hosts the fire station in Perry Park. And to salute that park, Reedon Avenue remains just across the street. I want to mention that Wendy's obit, I'm assuming, will be in the paper soon. And also there's a celebration of life at Deer Park Villa, September 30th at 12:30 p.m. So Wendy served back, I think it was 1986 to 1990, and she was a mayor. So we miss her, and I'm sure her family misses her terribly. Thank you all, and good night.